So for a week we were constantly employed to imagine. Imagine what we are yet to be locally and globally. The denominational leadership, in my opinion, has really been challenged to take Paul's writing to Timothy at heart. Paul writes, "Let no one despise or think less of you because of your youth, but be an example or a pattern for the believers in speech and conduct and love, in faith, and in purity." So as we gather for General Conference 2010, one of those many discussions that we had in workshops and in conversation and even in worship was, what is the role of youth and young adults in MCC? For many of us in the Alphabet Soup community, we know that youth can mean something very different than in the mainstream church. A thriving youth group in the church down the street has a totally different understanding here at MCC Palm Beaches. And in trying to define what that means for us as an MCC congregation, let's begin this way. Anyone who is under the age of 35, raise your hand.
Wow.
Some of you are lying.
Yeah.
God.
Almost.
There are a few of us. There are a few of us.
Wow.
So if you look around, you see very few of us, right?
Wow.
And so that's how the conversation has started. In MCC, youth is 0 to 35. I don't know how much to relate to a 16-year-old, being 28 myself, or even a 3-month-old. But at least the conversation has started. So I digress a little. But this was a prevalent theme at this conference. We were reminded that in 1968, it was a 28-year-old man that had a vision for a church where all would be welcomed and accepted.
Amen.
We were reminded that it was in those early days that many 20-somethings began accepting their calls for ministry in what was then a church in its infantile stage. We were reminded that it was those same 20-somethings that have risen to become the leaders of what we now know as Metropolitan Community Church. At young ages, these were the individuals who were able to listen to God's call, embrace their call for ministry, and empower others to fully embrace the light of Christ, which can and does easily shine through. This is wonderful news, which we are very thankful for. Amen? Amen. And it is because of these individuals that we are soon to celebrate being a Christian denomination for almost 42 years.
Wow. All right.
Just, amen, just 7 years, mind you, of being in the "what does youth mean" conversation. So, wherever we are in this process, I ask, where did we lose the practice of enabling people of that age bracket, of those early leaders in our fellowship? Did people in their 20s and 30s stop hearing God's call to ministry?
No.
Like my namesake, and I'm very thankful that my parents named me Jeremiah after the prophet. Did God stop telling young adults, "Before I shaped you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you. A prophet to the nations. That's what I had in mind for you." So surely not, my friends. God did not stop calling people my age to the ministry and this work. God continues to speak to individuals like myself and Brian, Reverend Marion, Reverend Patrick, Reverend Lily Brock, Reverend Troy Perry, and Reverend Nancy Wilson, while still young, and begin empowering them for their journey ahead. And I believe in this year, the leadership of MCC heard God's call to again embrace those young individuals who are not only in ministry, but who may have been estranged from the church, because of what others are saying in their name of God. The majority of individuals responsible for creating the different types of worship experiences at this General Conference were people my age. Specifically, Reverend Wes Mullins of Pikes Peak MCC in Colorado, and Daniel Arredondo, who was the music minister of MCC Austin. And the individuals responsible for making conference a reality are Jennifer Justice and Carlos Chavez. You see, 2 young adults. And these 2, who have been active in MCC for some time now, were also the 2 that put their jobs on the line and said, if we are going to offer a worship service for young adults or youth, we need to mean what we say. We need to stop throwing in a teenager into the worship participation and call it the youth service.
All right.
They pleaded with Reverend Elder Nancy Wilson and the other elders and said, we want a youth service geared to those under who we call youth, under 35. And all those participating in that service need to be of that age bracket, including the preaching.
All right.
So, weeks later, the decision had been made. Nancy came to them and said, we'll give you one of the morning worship services. Morning worship, 9 o'clock. Really? Excuse me, don't think so. So, they had the audacity to go back and say, no, that's not good enough. It needs to be one of the evening services so that all conference attendees will be fully present and able to experience this generation. So in the end, after much grumbling and arguing, Thursday evening was young adult night, and all participants on the stage were under the age of 35. The invocation prayer was presented by 6 to 10 young adults, all in different languages, including American and British Sign Language. Amanda Ackerman, a 21-year-old, presented the sermon. Reverend Brad Rice of Chattanooga, a 28-year-old, gave an amazing call to offering thanks to the gospel of Tyler Perry's Medea. The praise team consisted of 10 to 15 young adults. The communion consecration was given by Reverend Carl Hand, the pastor of Craig MCC in Australia, where the entire congregation is under the age of 35. Thriving, might I tell you. Thriving congregation. And then, in an act of humility, and in the personification of actions speak louder than words, as teenagers and young adults served communion, present and past MCC elders served as acolytes, holding the communion for the next generation of MCC elders. So having said this, I pose to you the question, MCCPB, what do we imagine? Do we hear the words of Paul? Let no one despise or think less of you because of your youth, but be an example, a pattern for the believers in speech and conduct and faith and in purity. If we begin living out this practice, as I believe we have begun to do so, I promise you, God will do far more than we can ask or imagine. And my friends, it will be in this that God will take us to the unimaginable. May it be so. Amen.